Gabriel Lipper. Wow, what a fascinating man. He's been an artist for almost 30 years. He paints. You just have to look. I don't know if you know Gabriel. You have to go to 8 paint.net, the number 8, and see his work. Absolutely astounding. He started as a child and just constantly drew and was commissioned to draw something, and then just took off from there. But just the body of work is absolutely incredible. He teaches now. He still paints. His art has gone through the transformations in his life, where at one point he was kind of painting decadence and scenery and faces, and now he's got a daughter, so it's very different now. But just I start the conversation with the question of, do artists see things that we don't see? I see these paintings of flowers that he's painted, and I see more richness in that than I do the actual item. Why is that? And he goes on to say that, training to be an artist, you have to see things as if you didn't see them before without, removing bias. And your catalog, there's a flower, you already know what a flower is, but trying to see the uniqueness in it. And he also, there's this whole series of faces that he paints of friends and of people that he knows. I ask about synesthesia. That's when you see, some musicians have synesthesia and they hear a note and they see a color. They associate something with a note, with a number or a color or something. I ask him about that. We go into some artistry as well. I have to ask about technology and where AI is going in painting. Fascinating conversation with Gabriel Lipper. Thanks for listening. My goodness, Gabriel Lipper, thank you so much for your time today. I am so very excited to talk to you. Are artists' senses enhanced when I see one of these particular paintings you have of flowers, and I swear I see more in that painting than I would in the actual flower if I saw the literal item? So when you see things, do you see things differently than others to be able to paint it and capture it like that?
Two answers to that. One is absolutely, and then the other one is no. I think everyone has the potential
Hmm.
to see the world vividly and intensely,
Hmm.
but it's a practice. And just like now, if you were to ask Michael Jordan, could everyone dunk like you? No, of course not. But look at how many hours he put on those sneakers.
Hmm.
So of course his ability is heightened because of that. And in the same way, as an artist, it's not necessarily that you're born with a gift. You might be born with a leaning toward looking.
Hmm.
I'm interested. That's really what being an artist is about, is being awake and being interested.
Awake and interested. So when you work with students, even you're renowned as a painter for over 30 years, I believe now, 25 at least. When you're working with young people or even older people, I mean, are you saying, when you see your object that you want to paint, notice this, notice that, notice this, and you're trying to bring to attention to them something that you don't think they would see?
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. And it's probably not what you think. It's
Mm.
not, hey, look at the petals on that flower and the color and how that, and how pretty that flower is. It's not words like that. It's, what if that wasn't a flower? What if this was the first time that you'd ever seen whatever that is in front of you? Let's take the words away from it. Let's take the description away from it, because that's what ties us up, and that's what
Mm.
confuses the eye. Once you've looked at a flower and you name it and you say, this is a flower, you don't have to look quite as closely, because you already cataloged it and you've already made some assumptions about what you've seen. And then the curiosity begins to fade. You know what a flower is.
Mm.
So can we approach the world and around us in a way that when we look at it for the first time, every time? And that's really what I'm teaching.
Hmm.
It's more about that than it is really any kind of specific technique, although I have certainly plenty of those. But yeah, that's what it is. It might, it's called learning to see.
Learning to see. And if there's a particular item that the artist noticed in its subject that it appreciates more than other, they will subconsciously highlight that more as they're rendering their paint?
Right. And that is maybe some of the magic of art, but it's also one of the major pitfalls
Hmm.
when we are trying to say something specifically and we say, we're telling a story about a person. So we fixate on the face or maybe the eyes because that's how we exchange our, ideas. Then everything becomes about that face or those eyes, and it's easy to forget the rest of the painting. And so a lot of times you'll see an artist who just really works hard on a painting. They take out the little brush, they get it all perfect, and it still doesn't really um, land. It's not that exciting. So what happened? Why is it that somebody can make something so perfect and
Hmm.
still not have a dynamic painting? And it's because we tend to we tend to focus on the things that we think are important instead of looking at the whole, looking at the big idea, looking at the way that things balance each other out, and maybe the mundane elements in your painting are counterbalancing. They're holding this whole thing together, and you're not paying any attention to that.
Amazing. How similar is painting to songwriting?
Well, I've attempted a couple of songs actually, but I've never pulled it off. So I'd say absolutely different.
Mm.
but but no, of course not. I think, but well, they are very different. But they share obviously the idea of imagination and
Mm.
creativity. They also the way I paint, I like to tell a story in my paintings, and so obviously
Mm.
there's storytelling and songwriting as well. That's one of the things that I love about songs is the story. So how do we? And I think when you think about your favorite songs, they're not always the most complex songs. Sometimes it's the words they choose evoke in us some kind of emotion or response or recognition at least that
Mm.
that we can identify with that. And that's in the same way, that's what a good painting does for us.
Hmm.
There's something in that painting that resonates. And so it's that ability to connect with your audience creatively.
Gabriel, are you familiar with synesthesia?
No.
So synesthesia is when someone some very famous musicians have it when they hear a particular note, they see a color.
Oh, sure. Yeah. Wasily Kandinsky, painter, was obsessed with this idea that sound waves maybe I am vaguely
Mm.
sound waves have a resonance. They have they they pass through space, and so does light, right? Light has a similar wave. There's a light wave, there's a sound wave, and he was obsessed with the idea that you could um, illustrate a symphony, that the peaks of sound here could be matched by a specific color and
Mm.
intensity in his works. I love it. I love the concept, and if you look at his works, you can see he certainly was trying. I don't know if he achieved it or not, but yes, absolutely. There's imagine that, right? Why wouldn't there be some kind of correlation between color and sound if they're both based on waves?
And take it a step further, numbers. I mean, I have a friend, a musician friend and an artist. Whenever he sees the number 5, he sees red.
Okay, that's new. Haven't
Yeah,
heard that
or
one.
I know also people that have synesthesia, whenever they see a person, they associate them with the number. And so that's a number 4, he or she's a number 7, and they just group them together. They only have like 8 or 9 of these. Yeah, so
Wow.
it comes in many shapes.
Yeah, okay, I'm writing it down.
So you don't have this.
I don't think so.
When you see a color, you don't see a number. When you hear a sound, you don't
No.
see a color or hear a sound when
I
you
I
see a
I
number.
do when I'm working, I do, I rely heavily on music. I love to
Mm.
play music when I'm working, and depending on my mood and the direction I wanna take my paintings, I'll put different music on. Yeah, just as everyone does, when you're up for a sad song, or you're up for something that's
Mm.
upbeat and, energetic, but it definitely has a direct correlation with the paintings that I'm doing. It's related, but I wouldn't say I hadn't taken it to this level of, analytical observation. I need to look at that a little bit more. I've never heard of this synesthesia. That's very cool.
Yeah, many, like Kanye West has it. There's many artists who have it, but I always so, the whole art versus science, I don't have this, Gabriel, right? So I play a little bit of guitar, but I don't really have any other artistic. I love music at a perhaps a different level than others, but so I always wonder just how does your creative mind work? When you see that blank canvas, Gabriel, what does it ever stump you? Do you have intention before going in? Is part of the process art and science?
Well, I'm glad you said that. You started that off with art versus science,
Mm,
and there's so many reasons why that can't be true.
right.
It's almost, I mean, to me, it's like science versus religion. It's science versus so many things. It's like
Mm,
it's ingrained, it's embedded in who we are. So you can it's two sides of the same coin. And one of my favorite things to do is to look for ways of identifying, the scientific principles behind the art. But that's just for me. That's like a side
mm,
bet. It's
mm,
not my main. What my main thing is, you touched on it, is when you walk up to a blank canvas. And Joe, you don't paint, but I can imagine just even me saying that, you're like, what would you do, right?
mm,
How
mm.
do we approach that vacuous
It's daunting.
emptiness? What do you do? And I had a mentor years ago named Harley Brown, and he told me, make the first stroke.
Mm,
So you go up to that painting and you just put something down. You just get started. um, because what's really going on isn't
mm,
about the painting or the lack of painting at all. It's the trepidation that we have in our minds around, am I going to make a masterpiece? Is it going to be good enough? Am I good enough? All of these kind of weird dialogues creep in there, and so when you get started, that movement is what gets us through it. And I have a few techniques that I use as an artist, where I really just throw paint down in the beginning, um, just to break through that. If you
whoa.
put something really ugly down on the canvas, what's going to happen? You're going to respond to that and go, you know what?
Mm,
I can do better than that.
mm, mm,
When you have nothing there, the possibilities are infinite, but the possibility for failure is also infinite. It can actually be intimidating. So by throwing down some ugly in the beginning, you're actually making it easy. You're saying, "Look,
mm,
I mean, yeah, that's pretty terrible. So I think this next brushstroke can be at least a little better than that, and you've got something started." And I think that's what attracted me to your show too, is this concept of, hey, let's just get it moving and create a rhythm around what we're doing, and that momentum is really a huge tool in making great art, just like everything else.
hmm. Do you believe that inspiration is so there's this there's this great story where Bob Dylan creates writes and performs and records along the Watchtower, publishes it, and within weeks Jimi Hendrix is performing it, and Bob Dylan happens to see him perform it weeks later live in London, and Bob Dylan says that song was never mine. That's the way it was supposed to be played. I'm never performing it again. It was never my song. So there's certain artists that believe that the muse kind of passes through them, but it's not particularly theirs. They may own it for a while, but it's not theirs. It's somebody else's. Is it the same thing in painting?
I think it depends on the artist. I definitely, I feel that way. It's
Mm,
hard to own anything, and I also, a lot of artists are really concerned about finding their style. What,
Mm,
what's my style? I've been working on all these different paintings and I can't see my style. And I have to remind them that, there's a million styles out there and people will come and go with them and take them and leave them. But those are like clothes. And what makes your paintings yours is you. So the person underneath the clothes is always the same. I mean, we
mm,
evolve too, but that's your style. So you can paint in every style and there's going to be a thread, and that's how you did it. Bob Dylan wrote that song, but when Jimi Hendrix played it, it was no longer Bob Dylan's. It was
right.
Jimi Hendrix playing it.
Mm.
And Bob Dylan liked that version better. I get it. If you've heard Bob sing and you've heard all wrong, yeah, it's like I get it. I like them both, but I don't blame them for giving that one away.
Yeah, it's amazing to me how you great artists work. It really is, Gabriel. And um when you decide, I mean, just going through some of your, I want whoever's listening to please go through your, you can go to 8paint.net and, your gallery as well. But I mean, I just start with faces. So you have, I don't know, about 8 or 9, these wonderful paintings, these faces. The expression on each of the individuals is so, you know, kind of breathtaking, and you can't help but be the one man with his head down, and the one woman who's got her chin up, and this, it's just, and a young child, and what they're thinking, and how do you decide what expression to choose on these wonderful subjects?
Most of those paintings are done. They're actually the majority of those paintings are done from life,
Mm,
and that's a really interesting process as a painter. I have my model or my friend in most cases sit in front of me, and this is what sets painting aside from photography or really anything else,
mm,
is that there's a time that it's not a snapshot, it's not a moment. I'm sitting with that person for hours.
hmm,
And so I'm taking in I guess, the fullness of who that person is throughout a space of time, and yet you see it immediately. When you look at the painting, you see all of it. You see hours of process in a moment, and it's an interesting kind of that's what I love about painting from life, is that
um,
they've been sitting with me. I usually have a conversation. I'm not such a stickler for holding still and everything like that.
mm.
So I get to, I mean, usually we know each other, but even if we don't, I get to know you during the course of this portrait. And that's, I think, what comes through. You get to see the humanity in someone because it's not just one expression. Of course, if you have a conversation with anybody over the course of an hour, you're going to have different emotions come up, different ideas, and that's what I try to convey in a painting, is the fullness of a person. And you can do that using photo references too, if
Right.
you're limited in that way because you don't have a model to sit for you or what have
Mm.
you. But it's nice to either know that person or put a lot of intention behind the work, um, so that you can kind of find your way, and put more into it than just copying the edges and the colors.
How do you choose them? I mean, do you say that's a face I need to paint, that's not a face I need to paint? How do you decide?
Yeah, mostly that's what
Mm,
that's what I
mm,
say. Actually sometimes, especially there's a lot of paintings that I'll have multiple figures in. I love the idea of telling a story with more than
right.
one figure,
Barn, yeah.
and it's like casting a movie. I
Mm,
I I put myself in the role of director, I
mm,
guess, and you do casting calls and you bring in the people. You don't have to call because I know who I want to paint, but I go, I want, a regal looking guy with kind of you know a grumpy face, and that's going to be my buddy Brian every time.
mm,
So he comes in and I say, put on a suit jacket, Brian. You're here. But then then maybe it's a pinup model, or it's a withered old guy or whatever we got going, and you place them, and you start telling this story. It's I'm making these little mini cinematic features sometimes. I love that. I love that process of being able to basically take the story in any direction that I want to go.
So they're there for a couple of hours, I assume. Are they on their phone? Do they have to sit still? Are you done with the painting at their conclusion before they leave?
It all depends on the painting. My favorite way of working is from life, of course, but sometimes that's just not possible, scheduling, things like that. So sometimes I'll do photo shoots with people and create a kind of a montage that way. But for the most part, what I like to do is I like to paint with them there. I'll do a sketch, excuse me, where I compose compose where everyone's going to be, and then I start bringing in the models individually. A lot of times I'll have friends who say, "Hey, we should all get together and you can paint a painting." Well, that's 5 people. I'll be painting on one person's eyebrow, and all these other people are just sitting there. So I usually do it one at a time, and then I paint them, and we have a conversation. They're not on their phones. There's no
Okay.
unless that's the pose, but they're not on their phones. We are going to have a conversation. It used to revolve around a lot of drinks, now less so, but it's always a good time at the studio. That's the whole point of it. It has to be organic and natural.
So fascinating. You actually sketch it. You storyboard it first.
Yeah, 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 absolutely. Absolutely.
And you don't storyboard it on the actual canvas, on a separate piece of paper.
It just depends. Sometimes it's spontaneous. I mean, I've been doing this for a long time, and
Right.
so, you know, if I the it's kind of the answer to your last bit of the question is that I don't finish a painting with the models in the room. At the end of the day, when everything gets put down, then I look at it and I say, "Well, what do you feel is working? What is not working?"
Mm,
You go out of creative into the critical mind. If you're editing while you're painting, you're not making good work.
right.
So you've got to go back and forth between the two.
And the American dream,
Right.
right? This is a gallery now that has what brought you here? Is this similar now? I mean, do you know these people?
So the American Dream is a series that took me a kind of a long time to get to.
Mm,
It was something that was bubbling under the surface, I guess. And when I put those pieces together, yes, I know those people. No, they don't live on mega yachts, uh, but they do in my paintings. Uh, that's a really interesting series. I mean, for me, because it actually at this point I'm almost uncomfortable with it. I painted.
wow.
I started this series, and it's mega yachts, and then in the background, the world's burning, Nero's Rome or something like that, and
Mm,
there's some oil rigs on fire. There's the hills on fire. Within a couple of years, my valley burned down. But we'd lost a ton of homes. My studio where I started that series burned down,
wow.
and I couldn't help but feel a little responsible. Now that might be that might not be true, but it is interesting. I don't know how many times I've painted paintings and then seen some kind of manifestation, come through life. And I think the obvious scientific explanation would be, well, because you're aware of it, because you're looking for that, and now look at it, it lines up. But sometimes it's a little uncanny. It's unnerving. But yeah, the American Dream series was just you know, this is an amazing world we live in, but this society is a little, it's unbalanced.
Mm.
And so that was, I think, my response to what I see in the world.
It's always fascinating to me that artists like yourself go in an area and their art reflects it. I think of off the top of my head, I think of Bruce Springsteen in '87, Tunnel of Love. So he was going through a divorce at the time, and it's very reflective, brilliant disguise, and the music. I think of even John Lennon during Sergeant Pepper's. It was mostly Paul doing that work. He was going through a divorce as well, and so sometimes the artist. I don't. Do you intentionally say, "Look, this is where I am"? You people come along with me and see what's happening to me? Or is it just, this is where I am and this is what I'm going to paint, deal with it? Talk to me about the beholder of somebody who's consuming the art. Are you concerned with them? Do you want them to think a certain way or thing about your art?
That's been a real struggle for me over the course of my career because I
Mm.
tend to paint in a kind of in a vacuum. I like to paint. I paint whatever I want to paint for, I'd say 80% of the time. And and then I'm not sure that I'm always comfortable sharing my,
Mm.
introspective world with an audience.
Mm.
But what am I doing? Is it just uh, you know, am I just doing this for myself? That's kind of self-absorbed, and so I think
Hmm.
that's a struggle because then once you put it out there, it's not yours anymore. Just like Bob Dylan was saying, it's you got to let it go. And the idea that I would impose a perspective on the viewer would make the work a lot smaller. Um,
Mm.
I did a whole series called National Cowboy, and it was reflecting on how I saw the United States um, acting in the world, kind of like big steps, heavy hand, carry a
Mm.
club,
Mm.
speak softly, that kind of thing. Um, and but that was just what I thought. Most of the pieces ended up selling to very conservative ranchers, and they, and they didn't have the same
Very good.
perspective that I did on the world, but it didn't take away from their perspective. Like theirs is a very legitimate perspective, and it
Hmm.
surprised me. I realized that my work was way bigger than the limited view that I had taken.
Mm. Mm.
Um, and that was one of the early first one of the first shows that I sold out, and I realized, um, you know, this is bigger than me. I get to be, like you said, a conduit for the work, and then wherever it goes from there isn't really my business.
I'm here in Western Florida right now, and the Dali Museum, right, is right down the. So here, and I love going to museums. I go in New York City, MoMA, and the problem, Gabriel, is that to me it feels like it's 200 concerts going on at the same time, right? So I look at a photo, excuse me, I look at a great painting, a piece, I sit back, I start to interpret what I feel, I soak it in, and then I have to move to the next piece. And it's almost like a ginger between each, sushi, right? You kind of have to cleanse the palate a little bit, and you go. And then I hear a tourist person saying, "Well, this painting, this is what the artist was going through, and this is what they were trying to apply." It's like, that's not what I thought at all, and I'm still trying to clear my head on this next one. And I walk out of there instead of feeling inspired, often just overwhelmed. That's not the
Wow. Yeah.
intention of a museum, but that's the way I reflect from it. Have you ever heard of this before? Is it
I
just
mean,
me?
no, it happens to me every time.
Yeah.
It's not a unique experience, I don't think. I mean, you just have to go. You're like, you put your head down, you get in the museum, you take as many experiences on as you can, and then boom, you're done.
You're
It's
done.
forget it. But
Yeah.
it's usually for me, it's usually 6 hours later because I can't peel myself away. But
Mm,
that's a lot of stimulus in
it
those museums.
is.
It's incredible, and this is people's life's work.
Yes.
I mean, it's incredible. These collections of art are one of the most. It's definitely for me. It's one of the most amazing things that humanity has.
Mm.
Are these collections of history and people's pers- perspective and experience.
And your other point about, I heard you talk about like Van Gogh, for example. I mean, here's a man who's been institutionalized by his brother, never sold a painting. I mean, probably wouldn't be the best conversationalist, right? To have, but his work is genius. So, we have. I may have mentioned some artists in this particular conversation that I don't particularly think I would like to have lunch with. I don't know. It would just seem so. So the separation between art and the artist can sometimes be a struggle.
Sure. I mean, Van Gogh was trying to woo a prostitute by cutting off his ear. I
That's
mean, the
right.
guy was he's probably not a good dinner guest.
Yeah. Yeah.
He's, you know, uh man, this yeah, and that's the thing about it's always been Art is very introspective. It's very solitary. It's not necessarily a social construct. Being an artist is a different way of experiencing the world. Um, and some some of us, I'm fortunate enough to be able to carry on a conversation, but I know a lot of really incredible artists who really struggle with that.
Mm.
So how do how do you make those two? How do you bring those worlds together? The Van Gogh is a perfect example. Van Gogh is truly one of, I think, the greatest artists of all time. I
Mm.
every time I see a Van Gogh, I know that I'm seeing something transcendent.
Mm.
But I wonder if we would know that if his uncle was one of the largest art dealers in the world at the time.
Wow.
Something that most people don't realize. I didn't realize that when I was in my 20s. I thought, oh, you just build it and they will come. I'm just gonna go out there and believe, and you don't. There is something else going on, and someone needs to tell your story. If it's not going to be you, who's it going to be?
Mm.
But yeah, in his case, his brother's wife, after Theo died, soon after after Van Gogh died, she took on that work of marketing Van Gogh. So there's somebody at the helm. There's got to be there's it's
Wow.
a myth as an artist that you can paint all of your paintings and put them in your closet, and someone's going to come and tear them away from you and put them on the walls and celebrate you. And that's a hard thing for an artist to realize, I think.
An artist cannot fail. It is a success to be one. Charles Cooley from your Instagram.
Yeah. I so this is the this is the truth for me. My art is it's my way of getting through life. It's how I process the world, and the act of doing that is enough. It may not have always paid the bills, but it's always fed me.
Mm. Mm.
And and I think that's a really important thing for aspiring artists, frustrated artists to recognize, is that for most of us who are in the arts, we didn't necessarily choose it in the same way you choose, a career in, you know, um, like a medical career or a legal career. Seems like a good job. This is something I'm interested. Blah 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 blah. Art tends to choose you.
Mm.
Are you obsessed? Do you not sleep at night because you're because you've got visions of sugar plums, bouncing around? You might be an artist. There's there's something about the way that we uh, are in the world that causes us to need to express it, and not everyone's like that, and so just the ability to do that, or the ability to at least allow yourself to do that, is a gift.
You started drawing as a child early on. You were commissioned to, you talked about it, about you had to draw something, kind of a tragedy in town?
Well, it was a semi tragedy. It was my first commission. Wow, you've got some deep stacks there, Joey. Nice work. My first commission was across from my high school. That wasn't actually my first commission, but my first like public commission. Someone sailed their car through the front of a coffee shop, and it wasn't. Fortunately, it wasn't a tragedy, but it was the loss of the frontage. And so they gave me a big the they came across to the high school and they asked, who can help us, and the faculty sent me, and so I did a big, coffee cup, big, then on their double boarded up windows, and it was pretty nice, and I always felt like they took their time replacing that window. So,
Mm.
or two windows, but yeah, so it was interesting because that was one of those moments where what I was normally I did something in my sketchbook, and here it was, and it was directly across from the school, so people saw it, and I started getting feedback like maybe you shouldn't be a stockbroker,
Mm.
maybe this is your calling, and I started to take it seriously and a bit differently.
That was it? That was the turning point?
the seeds were being planted,
Mm,
I came from a family, my parents were very supportive of anything I wanted to do, but there were the grandparents, and there was a bit of Midwestern, you need to do something
mm,
with your life, and
mm.
being an artist is a great excuse. So I was thinking, well, maybe I need to, it was the '80s. I thought I should be a stockbroker, and I'm really glad I didn't make that choice,
Me too. We all are.
man. But yeah, you just have to find your way.
Yeah, how important is it that you had those supporting parents,
It was very important. I mean,
right?
I one of the things that I have become very clear on working with so many students from all over the world is that the probably the biggest hurdle for any artist to get over is self self-doubt.
Mm,
And so much of that isn't even ours. We've taken it on because of the messaging from, our parents, our grandparents, you know, our community. When you make a painting, is the first thing in your mind, what will people think? Because if it is, the painting's never going to be that great.
mm,
And so, I was really fortunate to have that kind of support that allowed me to, believe that what I was going to create was worth looking at.
mm,
I think it was David Bowie who talked about how artists have to be kind of self-centered because you're creating something that you expect people to want to see or look
mm,
at or hear.
mm,
And that's
mm.
kind of crazy. Like, why would
Hubris.
your work be any more important than anybody else's? And the
Right.
truth is, it's not.
Mm.
The only difference is that an artist is willing to put it out there.
Hmm. Yeah, you've got great quotes on your Instagram. I already mentioned one, Gabriel, but art is never finished, only abandoned. Leonardo da Vinci.
Yeah,
Do you believe that?
Leonardo, he was a bit of a, he was
Sure.
he was a cynic.
Well, he
I
had some
threw that
tough
one
times
I
around
threw
him.
that one up there. I'm not even sure how I feel about it. Some days I'm like,
Yeah.
absolutely, as I, put a painting aside. But then other days I go, no, I landed that one. Let's,
Really?
yeah, yeah. I think what does happen though is you work on a piece until there's an impasse, a slowing down, and then a lot of artists just keep on, trying to grind it out, and that's when
Mm,
the painting goes to crap. You if you keep whittling away, you're chasing this elusive perfection, you're never going to arrive. So at some point, this would be maybe my take on that quote. At some point, you have to recognize that you've said what you came to say. You don't get there is no perfection.
mm.
So we have to put it down. We have to put it on the wall. We have to sell it. We have to give it away.
I come from the tech background, and I believe in it. We wrote a couple applications, and I don't think software is ever done. But talk to me about just technology and how it's influenced our community. There are many of artists out there that actually their medium is completely digital.
Right.
How different is that than
It's very
painting?
different. I mean, I'd like to it's the creative process may be the same, but I guess my worry for a lot of digital artists, incredible people, incredible art, um, is the shifting in technology.
Hmm.
Uh, I paint because I want to get my hands dirty, and I want the textures. I want
The
I
smells.
want something visceral. I
Yeah.
want to have the experience of painting, and I also, at the end of the day, I want something made by my hands. And as much as and of course, the argument is yes, digital art is made that way, but the problem that I'm seeing now, this is a whole nother topic, but AI
Yeah.
is also digital, and all of a sudden, the digital creative world is faced with um, a machine
Mm,
that can create images, in moments
mm,
that would take a person not only a lifetime to learn and be able to do, but then, hours and weeks to create. Um, it's an interesting. I don't
Yeah.
know. I don't know where that's going. People ask me, well, what's going to happen with AI and your art? How is that going to affect what you do? Um, I'm honestly, I'm not really that worried about it because I'm not in publishing. I'm I paint mostly for me. I sell a lot, but I'm selling real paintings to people
Mm.
with walls. Um,
Not
I
NFTs.
yeah,
Yeah.
it's a real concern. Um, you can now you can make a comic strip in 2 minutes with a couple of clever um, prompts,
Yeah.
and there are amazing artists who've spent their whole life building this these line qualities, and the computer just grabs them and basically steals them. I don't know. It makes me really uncomfortable. Honestly, that whole thing is not great.
Now,
I
what
digital art is incredible, but it's there's a, it's a mm, I don't know where to take that one. I'm sorry, Joey. It's too fresh.
Right. Now, all the artists that were around when the camera was invented, wouldn't they feel the same way?
Right. See, this is the thing, isn't it? Like, it's also this tool. I've got into the AI world and played with it a bit, and it's like, wow, I've never seen that before. These two ideas coming together created that. I've never seen that before. So it's this way of propelling the whole creative construct forward in a really rapid fire way, and maybe it's opening the doors for opportunities that we've just never imagined.
Mm,
And that's why I almost put the conversation down. It's almost like a we'll see. There's a lot of doomsdayers out there that are saying, this is the end of art. And then there's a lot of, especially young people who are like, not at all. This is the beginning of art. What you saw with the advent of photography were two camps. One took their painting further into realism, further than they'd ever been able to go, because these images were fixed, and so they could refine and refine and refine. And then there were the Picassos, and
right.
the modern movement all came from that when they recognized that that was a dead end for them. They wanted something different. And so, who knows? Give it a couple years. Let's see what happens.
Yeah, I tend to be more, I'm a technologist, but I think of Picasso in that particular, so they started painting things. The photograph, the camera created this whole modernistic movement that now, okay, you could do that. We're going to paint stuff that you can't take pictures of. Well, how
Right.
about now, we're going to make things that AI can't do. We're going
Right,
to
and
make
that's
things.
where I feel pretty
Yeah.
good in my position. Like, I paint with pigments. So
Mm,
I'm good to go. Good luck, AI.
and
It's
texture. Yeah.
it's real, it
Yeah.
my and so that's exciting for me. On the other hand, I do think you're gonna see a lot of integration, immersion. Can you create with AI? And you're already seeing it if you start digging around in the art world. um, Immersive spaces where they use AI to pick up on the the audience. The audience is walking through a space, and AI is responding to the
Ah,
person in the space.
right. Where are
Wow.
their eyes going? Where are their eyes
Yeah,
going
yeah. I
on the
mean, the
actual. Yeah.
level of
Yeah.
ability that this kind of new computer, technology is introducing to experience is really over the top, and that's exciting. And for the people who are willing to, use these tools, it's like the artist who says, I don't use a camera. Okay, but someone else says, I use a camera. Are they wrong?
Right.
You know, no, it's your choices.
Hmm. You can only exceed your limits if you're discovered them.
Yeah, yeah. The, you're picking them out. That's good. Yeah, that's the thing, right? So until we are willing to really look and push our edge, how are we going to know what's possible for us? And Joey. I think I'm picking up on your vibe here a little bit. It seems like that's where you come from too. It's not so much, oh no, here's this big bad thing. it's over. Of course it's not over. It's here. There's no escaping it. What are we going to do with it?
History has proven. I mean, when the car was created, it put all the horses out of, horse masters out of business. But what did it do? It created a whole new industry of cars and tires and batteries and petroleum. And when the light bulb was invented, it put all the candle out, but it also created this whole. I look at it very, yeah. I That's just the way I am. But I think it's a good thing. I also hear automation in department stores where it's put in the cashiers. What's going to happen to the poor cashiers? I said, well, why don't you put them in the aisles where I'm always looking for stuff and I don't know where anything is? Let's get them out there helping the people. So I mean, I think there's always other areas of I don't know. It's just the optimistic in me, I guess.
It does sound optimistic because they don't
Yeah,
put them in the aisles.
they don't. We're just looking around. They
Yeah,
can
there's never any.
expedite.
They
Yeah,
are streamlining that business, and they
that's
do not
right.
want people to be a part of it.
Yeah, that's right. They want less humans as possible. Yeah. So,
Yeah.
it is exciting for me. So, Gabriel, I started my tech firm back in the '90s. I think we're a similar age, and I was working way too hard. Was not paying attention to my own self, and got myself, I was eating poorly, not exercising, got myself up to about 340 pounds. And
Wow.
the doctor said to me, if I don't lose the weight, you're not going to see your daughter graduate. My oldest was just born. So it was a turning point in my life where I said, look, I've done this to myself. This is something I need to do. So I took the next 7 months and I lost about 130 pounds, and, I kept it off. The
Wait,
whole
wait, wait.
idea.
So you did that all in 7 months?
Yeah, about 7 months, 130 pounds. Yeah. So people ask me how, what's the secret, what's the magic bullet? And my one word answer is just discipline, right? Look, I,
Yeah.
I put myself here, and I'm not living for myself anymore. I'm living for this wonderful person that I have responsibility for, that I brought into the world. So that's, and I kept it off. You can't look at losing weight as a finish line. You gotta keep at it. So I just say discipline. I got focused. Um, I got very strict, and lots of control and routine. I wonder how discipline plays a role in your life, Gabriel Lipper.
That's a really interesting question, I think, especially for an artist, right? I
Yeah.
think I think artists are notoriously given a bad rap as being undisciplined,
Mm.
and that is part of what makes creativity work. If we
Hmm.
do the same thing every time, without breaking from that, where does the creativity, where does that spark come from? But within some constraints, when you do set some limits for yourself, um, then there's actually a different kind of creativity that occurs where within those limits, what can we do? How can we do it? I imagine, when you're, I mean, I don't imagine, I've tried this before too. When you change diets or you limit your what you eat, for example, all of a sudden the first thing the brain wants to do is figure out how you can make it better
Mm.
because, this is no good. What are we going to do to make this better? Um, and I think that's a big part of the creative process too, is by setting some constraints around what you're doing, and then you also can create a rhythm. Um, I have a we took
Rhythm.
over this hashtag on Instagram, 21 a week, hashtag 21 a week. And the premise is simple. 15 minutes a day, 3 5-minute sketches. So you draw,
Hmm.
your loved one sitting across the way on the couch. You draw your breakfast, your dog, whatever. But just 15 minutes a day. That's I don't know what it comes out to, like a hour, 140 minutes. I don't know what it is. It's not much. In gym time, it's minuscule, right? So but 21 a week, and the deal is, they start a drawing and they go, I'm going to make a drawing, and then they start working on this drawing emphatically, and the next thing they know, they've got half of a face, and then that's the last drawing they do. What if they did 21 drawings? That's 1 week.
Wow.
And so the number is what's important, not the content. You fill up a sketchbook really quick with garbage. None of them are good, but the rhythm, that repetition is, your synapses are firing. You're doing something, and that repetition is building those muscles, that ability to see. So I tell students, you can take longer on a drawing, if you want, but you have to hit that number. You have to hit 21. I don't
Mm,
care about your drawings. I care about that number. And that's
mm.
it's a wonderful way to light up your creative process and to get yourself back in the game, get yourself back in the studio. If you're a beginner and you say, I don't know how I could ever learn how to draw, I don't even want to know. Try this, but give yourself a little time with it. Do it for a month or two. I guarantee you, you're going to see huge different. As you know, Joey, in this story, I say I have this rule of sevens. If you do 7 drawings, one of them is going to be better than the other ones.
Mm.
It's not it's not rocket science, right? So now you've got a high tide mark. You've got a benchmark. Rule of 7. There's one. I like that one. What did I do when what makes that one better? And you get to learn from that, and you keep going,
Mhm.
and there's another
Mhm.
7. So you have 3 opportunities during the week to hit these high tides and learn from that growth. And also, what's your worst drawing look like? Why is it so crappy? What is that about? Learn from it. Don't let it be about masterpieces or achievement. Let it be about the process, and the process is definitely where we build our strength.
Yeah, Gabriel, you started with artists get a bad rap for discipline. I don't. I just think the opposite. I just think that you're pouring one drop of blood at a time onto the art, and you know you hear
Hopefully, just
about
one.
yeah, yeah, whatever it may be. Obviously not figuratively, but you hear about some of these artists who created a song, one of the biggest songs ever, in 30 seconds, just came to them. And then you hear about others, how it took them weeks, months, years to get it, to create it. So it's just you mentioned process, you mentioned routine, you mentioned even the discipline of knowing I'm sorry, I keep going back to music, but there's certain rules of chord progressions and in keys and things like that. I wonder if it's similar in color palettes with painting, but it just seems to me more discipline than ever is needed. I don't know, just from an outside observation.
Well, I mean, I don't think you're wrong. I think
Mm,
that at the heart of really great art is having a strong foundation of understanding, so that you can really take your work in any direction that you choose.
mm,
But before you do that, before jump off into the deep end, having some understanding of how color really works. I like to really break that down into
mm,
simple concepts. And it's not because you need to spoon feed people. It's because I feel like when an artist makes a big deal out of, art instructors mostly, but they'll say, color theory, and they get into all of these all this minutia. The reason they're making things so complicated is because they don't probably have a solid understanding of, if you can't explain something simply,
mm.
you probably don't grasp it very
Right,
well. That's
right.
that's just my opinion. So when it comes to color, I like to say, like, it's the primary colors. I don't know if you're familiar, but red, yellow, blue. Everything's built on that. So let's take it back to that. When you describe a color, instead of saying, "Oh, that's a fuchsia," well, this is reddish. And then does it have more yellow in it, or does it have more blue in it?
Mm,
The answer is probably blue. You don't see a lot of yellow in that. So now when you go to mix it, it's got red mostly, and then it's got a little bit of blue in it. I don't see a lot of yellow. That's it. It's that
wow.
kind of thinking that makes it possible to really master color, rather than trying to memorize every combination and do all of these formulas. So yeah, it's like try to lift the veil away from that complexity. That's what it's about.
Mm. I think Einstein said, right, if you can't explain it to a 12-year-old, you don't know it or
You
something
don't
like
know
that.
it, right?
Yeah,
Right.
it's something like that.
Speaking of AI, it's my Dropbox. Where I keep all my files.
Sure.
They have a new thing now where it's like, summarize your video to a 5-year-old.
Mm.
And so I love that because I'll hit that summary and I'm like, that's exactly how I wanna say it. I don't care if you're 75 or 5, that's what I wanna say, and it's not because I'm trying to dumb it down, it's because that's where the real the knowledge is.
Yeah, we talk about AI and large language models, LLM. And, I once asked one of the engines, explain quantum physics to me as if I was a fifth grader.
Yeah.
And it was wonderful. It said, you have a teddy bear and it's not, it's not really in this room. It's also partially in that room. And it went on and it was wonderful. I mean, again, these are the, many wonders that can help. Getting back to, I opened up the conversation with, what do you see? Do you see things differently than I see? You talked about colors right there, and the many areas where colors. This is, I don't know. I don't want to. This is all discipline to me. This is all direction. This is all order and routine and restraint and all part. I have this ongoing theory or thesis, excuse me, that discipline is a spectrum, and there's certain parts of it that are there or not. But it's just wonderful to me that um, you see these things and you teach it to others, and the vibrancy that you see the world is absolutely is wonderful. Gabriel, what motivates you?
Well, I mean, I think, that's changed over the years for sure. I mean, Joey, I have a similar story. I have an 11-year-old daughter. I'll I guarantee that that motivates me. That's changed who I am. I mean, I spent most of my career painting, beautiful nudes and bar scenes and every kind of decadence. And now I've got this 11-year-old daughter, and I'm like, wow,
Mm,
I
mm,
better sell those. I mean,
mm,
like I got a new direction that I want to go in so many different ways, just because my life's changed and I'm motivated by different things. But at the heart of it is I want to continually grow and be creative, and I like the challenge of seeing something in a new way. I don't like making assumptions, and I don't I have very little respect for people who do.
mm.
So I
See
my
things one
my
way.
my world is about looking at something, trying to look at it without bias. And when I catch myself getting caught in an assumption or some kind of maybe
Stereotype.
prescribed way of
Mm.
thinking, I want to look at that and ask myself,
Mm.
why did I stumble there? Why did I make that assumption?
Perspective.
Perspective, yeah. Perspective is a great word. We see it in a lot of ways. If you ever want to learn perspective, you have to let go of what you think's out there
Bias.
and look for the
Yeah.
shapes. Just look
Yeah.
for the shapes, and it'll all fall in. If you are actually drawing the shapes that are in front of you instead of what you think is there, the perspective just lines up. So that's what it is. It's removing all of those biases, removing those blocks
Mm.
that keep us seeing the world the way we think it should be,
Mm.
and allowing ourselves to see it like as it is in front of us.
Is the world black and white or grays?
I mean, it's got all those, right? It has
Right.
some black, it's got some white, it's got some gray. It does. It does. That even there, right? If I were to say gray, then I'm making the assumption there's no black or white, and,
Right.
and vice versa.
Because there are some absolutes,
Yeah,
right? There are absolutes in our life, in our world.
until
There are
until
absolutes.
until you get into quantum physics.
That's right, when things are in 2 places at the same time. Yeah,
Yeah,
that's right.
yeah.
That's right. So given that motivation, Gabriel, how do you measure success?
Um, there have been some benchmarks along the way, things that I didn't I don't even wanna have to like we just moved into a new home, and it has a view. So that's a benchmark that has very little to do with success.
Mm,
But for some reason, in it since for the longest time, that's been in there. It's something that I really felt like I needed was to sit on my porch and stare out at the hills. So, is that success? No. But our lives, we all navigate things differently.
Mm,
I think some of my biggest successes are unseen. It's a
mm,
painting where I landed it, in that first hour. You mentioned some songs take 30 seconds and some take, weeks. That happens for me too.
mm,
And those high moments, those pinnacles are where those are the majors, like the view, the fast painting, all of these things landing, everything coming together, your kids coming up great. But maybe success is also your failures, being able to overcome those obstacles, get through a rough, spot, childhood, whatever it may be. That's a success, isn't it? So maybe it's
mm,
not the high point always. It could be, what did you get? What have you come through? What have you overcome? Um, I guess we just have to look at it. I like to look at things holistically.
mm. Absolutely wonderful
I
because
used to go to the snow in jeans.
huh,
And every snow day was fantastic until I was crying, as a kid. So, is that a success? Yes, we went up to the snow. It was awesome. Was it a failure? Every time I was like miserable and hated life. Uh, those are some of my favorite memories.
mm. Snow quickly turns to water, water turns into wetness and cold inside your
Oh, it's a nightmare, right?
pants.
I
Yeah,
mean,
that's
I
a
think this is probably a '90s conversation. I don't think there's a lot of kids in jeans in the snow anymore, but
that's a good point.
that's
Yeah, I know exactly
something
what you
we
mean.
all shared, I think.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Not very. It doesn't push it away at all. Gabriel, absolute pleasure. I was so excited when we set this up. A big fan of your work. Your mind and the way art, great artists like yourself work just continues to fascinate me. Anybody who's listening, how can we get in touch with you?
Well, you can follow me on Instagram at 8paint, the number 8paint. You can check out my website, 8paint.net. My personal website, where you'll see a lot more of my art, is artofgabriel.com. And yeah, that's how you'll find me.
And the website's a great place to start. Facebook, Instagram, YouTube,
Yeah, right.
LinkedIn, Twitter.
Facebook, I've got
Yeah.
YouTube's 8paint, I believe, as well. Facebook is Gabriel Mark Lipper Fine Art. So there's a million ways to find me. 8paint Infinite Arts is another Facebook page. Blah blah blah. It goes on and on. Remember 8paint, Gabriel Mark Lipper. Those are the two me's. There is some fake Instagram site
Oh
that is
no.
Gabriel Mark Lipper Find Art instead of Fine. If you see that site, flag it, report it, and get them out of here. It's the weirdest thing. They've got
Unbelievable.
like pictures of
Unbelievable.
me. All I don't know who did that. It's the weirdest thing.
Yeah.
I don't even understand what that's about. But
And you
eight
also
paint,
teach.
that's me.
I'm sorry. And you also teach a course. So
Yeah,
how
I
can
do.
we?
Yeah, it is called Learning to See, and I teach it once a year. It's an 8-week course. I follow up with 8 more weeks of just checking in, making sure my students have what they need. It's actually, you get all of the content for a year. It's an incredible course, and that's coming up here soon. I have a free workshop coming up February 3rd, 5th, and 7th of this next month, and it's called Create Art That Shines, and you can check that out as if you want to. It's a great way to see, learn a little bit about my teaching style and who I am as an artist, and you're gonna have an amazing time. A lot of people come back every year for that.
Gabriel, we'll make sure to put all those links in the show notes. Such a great pleasure. I hope when I'm in the great Northwest, we can get together and have a cup of tea.
Joey, I'd love that. Yeah. I mean, right now it's like 30 degrees in Florida or something. What's going on? You need to come up here now.
It was chilly a little bit, but it's back up to 75 now.
Oh,
It's
okay.
just
All right. Never
not an
mind.
issue.
I'm
Yeah,
not
yeah.
worried.
Gabriel, you be well.
All right. You too.
Bye
Thanks.
now. Thank you for listening and or viewing Joey Pinz Discipline Conversations. Please share this episode with one or two of your friends who you think may benefit from the episode. Our website, www.joeypins.com. There you find lots of resources and you could join our mailing list. Please follow us on all our social media, Instagram, Twitter, and Facebook. Podcast information, the video version of our podcast is on YouTube. Please subscribe. Audio is on all major podcasting platforms. Please follow them. And if you like it, please consider giving 5-star rating. Would really appreciate that. Would you like to financially support the podcast? You can go to our Patreon site. Consider $5, $10, or $20 a month. There's all kind of plans that we have there. There's like a one-time payment. What is this podcast episode worth to you? $25, $50, $100, $500, $1,000, $5,000. You be the judge. You can go to our PayPal account to do that as well. Thank you again for listening or watching Joey Pinz Disciple Conversations.